The restoration of the altar. As psychologists know, when defenses are disrupted, there's a period of real disorientation, accompanied by fear, guilt, and usually vacillation between anxiety and depression. The process discussed here is different only in that defenses are not being disrupted, but reinterpreted, even though it may be experienced as the same thing. In the reinterpretation of defenses, they are not disrupted, but their use for attack is lost. Since this means that they can be used only one way, they become much stronger and also much more dependable. They no longer oppose the advancement, but greatly facilitate it. The advancement can only be accepted within you. You may perceive it largely as external, and this will make your experience of it minimal. You can be shown the callous without accepting it for yourself. This is due to the improper use of the defense of externalization. Do not fail to appreciate, however, how remarkable your progress can be in this respect. You might perceive the callous at first as a vessel of some sort, whose purpose is uncertain. Even then, however, you can notice that the inside is gold, while the outside, though shiny, is silver. This is a recognition of the fact that the inner part is more precious than the outer side, even though both are resplendent. The reinterpretation of defenses is essentially to break open the inner light. Since the separation, defenses have been used almost entirely to defend yourself against the advancement, and thus maintain your separation. You generally see this as a need to protect the body from external intrusion. Fantasies about the body arise from the erroneous belief that the body can be used as a means for obtaining advancement. Perceiving the body as the temple is only the first step in correcting this kind of distortion. Seeing the body as a temple alters part of the misperception, but not all of it. It does recognize that the concept of advancement in physical terms is not appropriate, but the next step is to realize that a temple is not a building at all. Its real holiness lies in the inner altar, around which the building is built. The inappropriate emphasis which people have put on beautiful church buildings is a sign of their own fear of advancement and an unwillingness to reach the altar itself. The real beauty of the temple cannot be seen with the physical eye. The spiritual eye, on the other hand, cannot see the building at all, but it perceives the altar within with perfect clarity. This is because the spiritual eye has perfect vision. For perfect effectiveness, the callus of the advancement belongs at the center of the inner altar, where it undoes the separation and restores the wholeness of the mind. Before the separation, the mind was invulnerable to fear, because fear did not exist. Both the separation and the fear were miscreations of the mind, which have to be undone. This is what the Bible means by the restoration of the temple. It does not mean the restoration of the building, but it does mean the opening of the altar to receive the advancement. This heals the separation and places within you the one defense against all errors which can make you perfectly invulnerable. The acceptance of the advancement by everyone is only a matter of time. In fact, both time and matter were made for this purpose. This appears to contradict free will because of the inevitability of the decision. If you review the idea carefully, however, you will realize that this is not true. Everything is limited in some way by the matter of its creation. Free will can temporize and is capable of enormous procrastination, but it cannot depart entirely from its creator, who sets limits on its ability to miscreate by virtue of its own real purpose. The misuse of will engenders a situation which, in the extreme, becomes altogether intolerable. Pain thresholds can be high, but they are not limitless. Eventually, everybody begins to recognize, however dimly, that there must be a better way. As this recognition is more firmly established, it becomes a perceptual turning point. This ultimately reawakens the spiritual eye, simultaneously weakening the investment in physical sight. The alternating investment in the two types or levels of perception is usually experienced as conflict for a long time and can become very acute. But the outcome is as certain as God. The spiritual eye literally cannot see error and merely looks for at-one-ment. All of the solutions which the physical eyes seek dissolve in its sight. The spiritual eye, which looks within, recognizes immediately that the altar has been defiled and needs to be repaired and protected. Perfectly aware of the right defense, it passes over all others, looking past error to truth. Because of the real strength of its vision, it pulls the will into its own service and forces the mind to concur. This reestablishes the true power of the will and makes it increasingly unable to tolerate delay. The mind then realizes with growing certainty that delay is only a way of increasing unnecessary pain, which it need not tolerate at all. The pain threshold drops accordingly, and the mind becomes increasingly sensitive to what it would once have regarded as very minor intrusions of discomfort. The children of God are entitled to perfect comfort, which comes from a sense of perfect trust. Until they achieve this, they will waste themselves and their true creative powers on useless attempts to make themselves more comfortable by inappropriate means. But the real means is already provided and does not involve any effort on their part at all. Their egocentricity usually misinterprets this as a personal insulting, an interpretation which obviously arises from their misperception of themselves. Egocentricity and communion cannot coexist. Even the terms themselves are contradictory. The at-one-ment is the only gift which is worthy of being offered to the altar of God. This is because of the inestimable value of the altar itself. It was created perfect and is entirely worthy of receiving perfection. God is lonely without his sons, and they are lonely without him. Remember the poem which begins, "And God stepped out on space, and he looked around and said, 'I'm lonely. I will make me a world.' The world was a way of healing the separation, and the at-one-ment is the guarantee that the device will ultimately do so.